And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the North Sales J22 webinar. My name is Brian Hayes, and I'm going to be introducing you to our guest celebrity J22 presenters here today. What we do at the beginning of every webinar is we just give people a few minutes to kind of enter from the waiting room where you all been sitting in, and just give everyone a chance to catch up before we start diving into the afternoon's information and details. So we appreciate you guys spending your Friday afternoon with us, and for everybody who's observing special holidays over the weekend, safest and best holidays to everybody. I know there's a lot going on with many people observing holidays, and we're hoping you guys have a safe and healthy and happy holiday. We're going to kind of slide on here, and we're going to go to the next slide here, and just remind everybody before we dive into our presentation that now is a great time to support the class and make sure your membership is renewed. We've definitely been encouraging people, especially this time of the year and with all the things going on, to make sure that your class memberships are up to date. US Sailing memberships are up to date, especially the class memberships. The class really relies on all of us to make sure that we're supporting them financially so that we can get over these speed bumps and get on to the next regattas once the sailing world opens up. So again, we appreciate everybody being here this afternoon. I'm going to slide on to the next slide here and introduce the two people here we got presenting. First one, these guys really don't need introductions. We have Zeke Horowitz, who is our 2018 world champion, also the current midwinter champion, crewing for Mike Marshall, who's also here this afternoon. Mike obviously is a current J22 midwinter champion. The two of them got together and pooled their talents, and is a 2016 world champion and past J22 North American champion. So I'm just going to make sure Zeke is on the line. Zeke, you there?
I am here, Brian. Thank you for being here and getting us kicked off. Definitely stoked to be here. Mike, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. Quick note for me though is that as I'm doing displays and going through the video, it's on my second screen, which if I'm looking away from the camera, it's to the right. And
so you're not just ignoring me. It's not
I'm not
that you
just
don't want to
ignoring
maintain eye
no.
contact with me. Fair enough.
I'm trying to look at what because I'm almost possibly more interested in the video than a lot of people. A lot of people even on here, so I like it. I like it too. So that's what I'm looking at for everyone.
Good. Well, it's good to be here with you, Mike, and thanks everybody that's taken some time to join us this afternoon. It's cool to be able to gather virtually here and talk about J22 sailing. So we'll kick right into this thing. You know, when we kind of decided we wanted to do this J22 webinar, Mike and I got together and we were discussing what do we want to talk about? What do we think is important? And we're a couple of J22 dorks, and we went for about 3 hours just trying to narrow down what we wanted to talk about. But, you know, we enjoy talking about upwind sailing. We think there's just so much to be gained sailing this boat. It's kind of finicky and all comes down to balance. And we just thought there was really a lot to be gained from discussing the keys to upwind success. So we kind of threw a bunch of concepts on here to kind of look at, you know, always important to maintain the heel angle, keep it as flat as we can, and pay constant attention to your sail trim so you can keep the bow down, the boat moving quick. And as we go through this presentation, we've got a bunch of really cool video clips that we're going to be looking at. Some from light air, flat water, then we end up with some pretty breezy kind of fun stuff that Mike took some video of down here in Annapolis. And so we're just kind of going to go through all these kind of key points that you see on the screen here through the videos. But the things we really want to point to through these videos are the importance of having dynamic sail trim, both the main and the jib. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about all the finite adjustments there or the fine tune adjustments there that we have to use. But it's all about using dynamic trim to keep the boat really nice and balanced. It's all about finding balance so the boat's easy to sail at a high average speed. And I think that's what we're going to be looking at. So Mike, why don't you jump us into these videos and school us on some light air lake sailing?
Yeah, the guys in the guys and gals in Lake Minnetonka will recognize these videos pretty quickly. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of start off with some video and start off in the light air aspect of things. So kind of as we go through it, and see, just kind of check in on a few things. I think the most critical piece, as you talked about, is going to be the discussion on moving the sheets and heel angle, these more fine-tuned pieces. And just as we go through this video here, it smooths out in a second. We have an example here of a boat that's going upwind, and we'll kind of pause the video for a second and just kind of look. Again, it's a snapshot in time, so it's a little hard to, take everything out of it. But you can see as they're going upwind, and as we look from behind, there's a couple of big things to look at. And the first one that I'm looking at is, one, the heel of the boat. And I'm really looking at, and Zeke, jump in whenever you feel like you have something that I've said incorrectly, and feel free to be ready here. But the thing I'm looking at is I'm looking at heel of the boat, and in such flat water, if you look out here in this video, in such flat water, I really think that these boats, you can sail them very, very, very flat. And in this situation, you can actually see that all the crew are already on the rail, and so the boat, is in powered up phase. It's in that phase where you're no longer really moving in and searching for a way to get the boat going. You're more in the phase of really trying to pressurize the rail to push the keel down in the water to accelerate the boat forward, as opposed to using it to heeling moment. And there's a couple of things here. You see one crew's leaning in, and how do you get flat? You get flat by either easing the sails or flattening the sails or hiking harder. And in this situation, I think what I would actually do is, we're very close here, but there's a little bit more to be had. And it's probably through, the crew hiking a little bit harder here. And as we look through everything else, we would say, okay, well, the driver's trying to pull the bow down. They've got the tiller going to weather. They're trying to pull the bow down, so the boat wants to turn up. So we're really looking to get the boat flatter. That's going to help that boat balance thing that Zeke was talking about. What else are we looking to do?
You can even see, Mike, that I agree with you. They're not far from being on the right flat heel angle, but they're not quite all the way there. And if you look at the sail trim, you wouldn't say that they're way eased, but they're not all the way into it yet. So you're saying, what can you do to flatten the boat out in this case? And I think the answer is get that crew out hiking a little bit more and get the boat really all the way to flat.
Yeah, exactly. And then are they, the next question you asked is anything being left on the table here in terms of sail trim? And if we just go backwards for a second and we say, we always have this holy grail of, okay, well, the sails need to match each other. And the question that I always have is, well, how the hell do I know that when I'm on the boat? It's really, because I can't see the leach of the main without going back there. And I can't go back there. That's not fast. But I think there's a lot of positives here. Booms on center line or a half a boom width above, and I think that's really good. But it looks like the main isn't strapped, but it's certainly not strapped, but it looks pretty good. But the jib does look a little bit open here, and you can see that top telltale flying 100% of the time. You can see it going, and the good reference point that I use are the spreaders and where you end up on the spreaders. And there might be something more to be had in this, by really trimming that jib a little bit tighter. But that's also going to go back to boat balance. That's going to come into that part of, allowing, it's going to pull the bow down a little bit more, which is actually going to help this rudder.
That's exactly right. That's what's jumping out big time to me, is that he's pulling the helm up to weather to try to keep the bow down. And if he just pulls the jib in a little bit more, it's going to make it easier for that crew to hike out. And that's also going to help pull the bow down. So just getting another click on the jib is really going to pull that bow down and balance the boat out.
Yeah. And so if we jump into another example of this, we're going to see just a second here. We're going to see both that's even a little bit flatter at times, but they get a little over flat through the clip. And sorry, you're seeing the bow of my little inflatable there. But, really what we're talking about in flat is this look here. At least to me, this is what we're talking about. And you can tell as a crew when you're flat, if there was any kind of waves, your feet would be just touching the tops of the waves when you're fully hiked.
And even here, you can see this crew's he's pulling his feet up away from the water, whereas on the boat before that, there's a much bigger gap between his feet and the water.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. I got a A little out of sorts here. But yeah, so you can see, and they're really hiking hard. But then as we let the video progress, you see what happens here is they get into a bit of a lull. And when they get into that bit of a lull, right there, this is something, and I'll let you lead with this, Zeke, because this is something that we talked about at length a little bit before this and what's actually going on here.
Yeah, so obviously when the boat gets over flat like that, that's not exactly what you're looking for. You want to be able to get the crew weight in off the rail a little bit sooner. A lot of that, this is lake sailing, so this lull probably hit them kind of out of nowhere. But whatever you can do to sort of count down that lull so that you're able to be proactive about getting the crew weight in so the boat doesn't heel to weather like that. But the really big thing that jumps out from this video is as the boat heels to weather, how much the boat turns down. It's turning just away from the wind really, really quick as it heels to weather. And that's what you really need to avoid. It's almost, I mean, wouldn't you say, Mike, isn't it better to sail with a little bit of windward heel and push the tiller? That's really what you need to do, I think, is push the tiller away and keep the bow up so that even if you heel to weather for a split second, you're not losing that distance to leeward. And so I think, the helmsman not being hesitant to give a little push on the rudder at the same time that the crew moves in and maybe eases the jib out a little bit. That's going to also help the bow stay up a little bit. That's kind of what I'm, nobody likes this feeling of heeling to weather, but it's really important to try to keep the bow up as this happens to you.
Yeah, I think you're spot on to what I would be saying here is that, you change and watch how much the bow changes. And, the comment is, okay, well, if I push the rudder to leeward and that's against the way the boat wants to go, then I'm just dragging the rudder around. But in this situation, by letting the bow go down so dramatically like that, you're changing the direction of not only the rudder, but the keel as well. Mm-hmm. And you're doing it not once, but twice, because when the pressure comes back, you have to come all the way back up. So in this situation, I agree, unless it's a pretty major header on the telltales. And it's really important to remember that sometimes when you do have a header on the telltales, it's important to remember that you're not, it might be, so sometimes it's important to remember that if you do just get this quick header on the telltales, that it's just the boat decelerating because the breeze has gotten less, if that makes sense. Does that kind of follow?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. But I think in that case, easing the jib too is really good because we're talking about the balance of the boat, and the jib being over trimmed is going to turn the boat downwind as well as that weather heel. And so both of those things happening at the same time is why this boat dramatically bears off when they get this lull. So I think being really quick on the jib trimmer to give it a quick little burp, that's gonna stop the bleeding a little bit as you get the body weight in and get the boat back to flat. But they do a great job in this video once they kind of recover from the boat getting too heeled to weather, and you'll see the sails kind of go out and the bow's going to start to come back up to that normal sailing angle. But right here, like, crew needs to be jumping in, and you should see a big dump of that jib leech to prevent the bow from getting pulled down too much. And again, now they're moving into leeward. You'll see the sails kind of both go out for an acceleration, and the bow's going to come right back up.
Yeah, it's really interesting in this because they actually do a very good job of letting the sails out and getting the bow back up when this, at the end of this clip, they do a very good job of actually doing that. And then as soon as the bow gets back up, you can see the driver is actually pulling the main sheet back in and the trimmer is starting to pull the jib back in. I think the other key here is that the crew is completely on the balls of their feet the whole time. I think that's a really important piece with it as well. Yeah. And you can see that happens more towards the end of the clip. So
yeah, I think the biggest thing there is, don't be afraid to push the helm if you're the tiller, and push the helm if you're the skipper in that situation to, it's all about just kind of stopping the bleeding of that lull that's hitting you. So, but they did a nice job recovering there at the end.
Or push the helm if you're the tiller. It could go either way.
If you're the tiller, you should seriously consider pushing the helm.
Actually turning the rudder. So we got another example here, and this is just a little bit of a different location, and again, we're kind of seeing still in this light air situation, and we're just looking at, in both of these clips, we've seen boats that are doing it very well. And when Zeke and I were talking about them, we were looking at situations where there might just be a little bit more left on the table. And again, if you see this clip and what's actually going on here, you can see that the whole crew for a lot of this video isn't really hiking very hard. They're sort of a little bit in the boat, and the boat looks almost a little bit underpowered, but there's something missing. And I think it does have to do with the traveler. And if you see the distance between the traveler and the seat, and if we were to actually draw that on and see what the difference between the distance from sort of the traveler to the seat is about the same distance as if you were to get the boom sort of half a boom width to center line. And so in this situation, I would look to try to get the traveler up to the seat, and then that would allow this team to be able to hike a little bit harder and actually really press the boat flat and gain a little bit more as they're going upwind here.
Yeah, I think I completely agree, Mike. I think the boom needs to get to center line is what the only thing this team could do a little bit differently. But frankly, just for noting, they're sailing the boat really nicely and nicely balanced in this trim that they have. Like the helm is nice and centered. The leeches look pretty good that we'll see a little bit later, and everybody's nice and stable. But they're just leaving a little bit of power on the table by not having the boom all the way up. Sort of the way I think about it, and it's kind of across all these small keel boats. You are dying to get bodies out over the rail and hiking. That's like the name of the game. Until there's enough wind, you need to do everything that you can to get all the bodies up and hiking on the rail, and the boat can then start to perform as well as it can. And then we start talking about depowering. But in all these conditions where we're bodies in, we're just dying to get the bodies out. And so in that case, my traveler is going to always be all the way up, which for me is that car right at the edge of the weather seat. I don't ever think about moving a traveler down until we have bodies hiking and we're starting to depower. So that's all we're talking about in this, because they do look really nice and balanced. The sail trim looks okay. They're just leaving a little bit on the table by not having that traveler all the way up.
Yeah, and I think it's actually really interesting though, because you see the boat heel to weather there slightly, and that's the time that the jib trimmer actually decides to move in and have a quick look at the jib, and you can actually see the other crew member hop out on the rail and hike really hard to to kind of offset that. And you can see they are using an opportune time when the boat is gotten flat to be able to get in there. But still, as you said, it's just a little bit left on the table. And as we look on the sail plan too, you can actually see, how do you know on the boat that you actually see this, is that when you have the jib trimmed in, if we rewind just a little bit here in this clip, we'll actually see the main starting to bubble in the front. And that main bubbling in the front is another potential telltale sign that you can actually see from on the boat that says that maybe the slot is a little bit closed. And how do you fix that? You either trim the main harder, or you can move the traveler to weather to kind of open that slot back up a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I just think
so. It's interesting to see, I think.
No, it is really good. And again, they don't look terrible. We're getting a little bit greedy here, but that's our job. I think it's just a matter of getting the traveler up, and I don't move the traveler down until the second we're starting to, the backstay's got to be on before I'm going to start dropping the traveler. And certainly all the bodies are going to be up. But the other thing that I thought about, we can move on to this slide. Let's move on.
We can go back if you want.
I was just going to ask you, Mike, what do you think about where the helmsman is sitting here? I know they're doing the 4-person configuration, but it looks like he's maybe straddling the traveler bar. And I always think of getting my weight as far forward as I can as the helmsman, even with the 4-person setup, especially in this light air. And I might even, if I have to make an adjustment, I'll end up steering with my front hand and making adjustment with my back hand, because I want to get my weight as far forward as I can there. So I just wonder if the helmsman might be able to scoot another butt width forward.
Yeah, I agree. And out, I would say.
And out, yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Although I've sailed with you driving, and you don't like to scoot your butt out very much either. So
no, I don't. I actually like to sit on the seat inside and hold the 2 hands on the tiller. That's what I go for. No, but I would say at least on the, it's at least on the in the area between the sort of cockpit tow rail and the outside tow rail, I think are good places to be further out. I would agree. Is that, you want to move on from
Yeah,
this?
you now have my permission to move on.
Okay, good. Just got to make sure here. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see some stellar spinnaker sets here, but we just, and as we're going through this, we're always thinking about it. So the first two videos we've seen very close trim, and then the second one we saw again very close trim, better heel angle, but maybe a little bit left on the table for for the way the boat's going upwind. And in this clip, we actually, after the first part, we actually see a situation where we've got really nice trim. The boat's nice and flat. You can see the trimmer's always looking at the jib in this clip. The driver's got the main sheet, the tiller hand's rested. The boat's going upwind really nicely. There's not a lot of extra movement here. You can see the team moving in well, and this whole time, this boat's going nice and fast. And as we let the clip progress, you'll actually see when the bow comes down a little bit, or when they get a bit of a lull, you'll see the trimmer move in. And then as the breeze comes back, you'll see the trimmer actually ease the jib to allow the driver to push the tiller away and get the bow up without the jib pulling it down, which is really, really good, because it just means that the rudder isn't doing as much to slow the boat down for what's going on here. So we'll see it as it happens here a little bit. As they turn up, the trimmer's easing the jib, and he's coming back in and just testing the waters a little bit, allowing the driver to come up just a little bit through the video.
Yeah, and then it's perfect. I mean, you saw how easy it was for the bow to then come up as the kind of breeze came back in, or the lift came back in. That was really beautiful, the way the jib trimmer is kind of sliding across that platform there. And I don't know, what do you think about the position of the helmsman in this one, Mike? He's way out on the rail, almost even hiking a little bit. And I know as a helmsman, I kind of like that. I like the ability to sort of get my weight way out and start pressing the rail, maybe just as a feel thing. But would it be better to have the jib trimmer out in the wider part of the boat further out? What do you think?
So I think there's a couple of pieces here with that. I can see both sides of it, right? There is that interesting situation where the jib trimmer doesn't want to be, they might not have an easy place to be. They're kind of in that transitional place. They're not quite hiking, and they're not sort of leaning in. They're in a weird place where it might make sense for the driver to be that far hiked out. But there's also the situation where if you're in any kind of waves, you really want the weight in the boat to be a little bit more together. And so in that case, I think maybe I'd like the driver to scoot in a little bit and the trimmer to kind of lean to weather, and that's going to allow the boat to really, start to get the weight together and start to take off in that time when you've got a little bit of waves out there. It also, that trimmer being in the widest part of the boat and being able to really squish down on the rail, really at times when you gain 1 or 2 knots, helps to pressurize the rail, hook the keel up, and the boat just absolutely takes off.
Yeah.
What about the bow person, Zeke? What do you think?
Well, before we go on to the bow person, I like what you were just saying there, because I remember a very blatant memory from the Annapolis Nude a couple of years ago, where I got schooled by the hot toddy, Jeff Todd and Chip and those guys, when exactly that happened. We were sailing in that sort of condition, sort of like this, where it's not quite windy enough to get weight out. You're just dying to try to get that flow over your keel, get your keel hooked up so the boat can start going. And they were sailing along our lee bow, got a little bit of a puff, and Chip was just able to go from that position you see this trimmer in out to the maximum widest part of the rail and started leaning out. And they absolutely took off, like doubled the speed that they had, and I never saw them again for the rest of the race. And I was like, that was such an aha moment for me in the J22 of how important it is to get the rail pressurized, as you said, translate all that pressure into the keel and the flow of the boat, and it just goes. So I think that's a really excellent point. And you brought up, it's an interesting question about the forward crew, because I think they're doing a great job of having their weight laterally where it's supposed to be side to side for the boat to be nice and balanced. But I wonder about them being up in the air like that. We don't always think about our bodies dragging through the air as the boat's moving upwind, but it's kind of a big deal. And I wonder if there's a way for him maybe to get his butt down on the rail and sort of slither his shoulders in against the cabin house or something to just decrease his air drag. You're into Formula One, right? You probably know the answer to this.
Yeah, well, drag is a power function, right? So the faster you go, the more it affects. But yeah, I would say for sure, and it might all go hand in hand with this boat, right? The driver might move in a little bit, the bow person might move out a little bit and be able to turn around and get lower in the boat, and all of a sudden you've got a little less profile into the wind, and you've got maybe a little less drag, and perhaps in 2 knots of wind speed, it's, we can say we're talking about nuances here, but still, if you're talking about you need an 1/8 of a boat length to cross at the weather mark, maybe that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I did like what you're saying about about having those stories, because I'm pretty sure I have about 2,000 of those tearful stories about how someone just below your bow, you're holding them, and then they get that moment where they're able to squish the rail, and you go, well, that's the end of that.
It's the end. Yeah, it's totally the end. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't put the bow down. You just start, reaching around the course. But when you can get that rail pressurized, man, you're just gone, and you get going. Before we move on to the next slide, Mike, we just opened our chat room there on your Zoom account. If everybody's kind of looking, you can now click down at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat. Please feel free to enter any questions that you want into the chat room. They'll pop up to me, and we'll be able to kind of pose them. We'll try to answer as many as we can. We might not be able to get to all of them, but definitely chime in with some questions. There was one already in here from Phil, who was at my Flying Scot seminar. So he's a fan of the North Sail seminars. He was asking about vang sheeting, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. We got some exciting videos to show and some more heavy air stuff. So we'll definitely get into some heavy air stuff like vang sheeting towards the end of this seminar. But and there's another question of if we're recording, and the answer is yes. Thanks for reminding us. These are all being recorded, and they will be on northsails.com as well as our North Sails YouTube channel. So if you missed the beginning, don't worry, there's plenty of opportunities to come back and make fun of me and Mike later. It's all recorded. So once again, Mike, you now have my permission to move on and teach us more about J22 sailing.
Don't worry, I'm already there.
As you are.
As I am. Yeah, no, the good opportunity is that these are recorded. So anything we say is on the internet forever. So, be careful, or don't, whichever you choose. So we'll just dive into the next video, and kind of the way we organize this a little bit before we, this was actually a drone shot, but the way we organize this was we kind of started with light air, and now we're moving into sort of that medium breeze, and we wanted to focus on a little bit more is that, we always say, okay, medium breeze, sort of everyone goes the same speed, right? Everyone can sit on the rail, trim the sails in, and when it's pretty constant pressure and not super wavy, everyone goes a little bit the same. And so, we wanted to focus on a condition where it was slightly puffy, and this just happened to be one of those conditions where we're talking about 6 to 12, 15 knots, especially at the end of this. And the thing to look at in this boat going upwind is you can actually see that when the lull hits here, we'll just go back for a second in this video. You can actually see as we go over the top, you can see that as the lull hits, what you're looking at right there, and just go back and we'll just slow it down a little bit here so that we can start to play here. As the lull hits, you can watch the driver here actually trims the main end pretty aggressively when the lull hits. You see the lull hitting right about there, and you see the boom, and your video might be a little bit delayed for my voice, but you see the boom actually come in off the rail a little bit. And all the driver's doing there is, doing that active sheet motion that we're talking about, but they're actually just trying to, maybe the main's a little bit over trimmed at the time, but they're using it to give the crew another half a second to be able to get off the rail and get their weight in, which you see the crew doing here. Because with that, it means that the boat doesn't heel to weather and you don't have that big turn down. The second thing that happens is as you see the crew move in, and they react really fast in the video, as you see them move in, you also see the hands of the crew easing the jib a little bit. And it's a little bit hard here, but you can see it a little bit more towards the end of the clip with the jib getting played. And I just think it's really critical in this puffy condition that you're really using active controls. one of the things that we talked about a lot here, Zeke, and I want you to further on for me from our discussions, was that you have so many controls as a driver, and what are you prioritizing when you're doing this? Because you've got the backseat, you've got the travel, you've got the main sheet, and you've got the tiller in your hand, and your number one job is to drive the boat. What are you prioritizing in this condition?
Well, I think the things that are being adjusted the most are always going to be the sheets. The main sheet and the jib sheet are like just the direct, things that you can have the quickest response time with. And so I like what you were saying before about how quick, I think this is Kevin Doyle, brought his main sheet in to sort of capture it. I like to kind of think of it as capturing when the boat's coming back to windward a little bit too fast, a little bit faster than your crew can maybe get their weight in. You can just step on the main sheet real quick, and that just kind of stops the boat from coming to weather too quickly and kind of manages that the heel angle a little bit more consistently. So, the main sheet and the jib sheet are being adjusted the most. I think of the Traveler as sort of the gross tune. I think it's just a hard thing to be changing very actively because it has such an immense effect on the balance of the boat and the heel angle. So I try to get my Traveler set. A condition like this on a lake, you may have to adjust it from time to time. But I look for every opportunity to get my Traveler sort of in the middle of the range that it would need to be in a condition like this, so I don't have to move it too much. And I like to just play the backstay and the main sheet the most as the driver. So it's important to be able to. You kind of brought this up before, Mike, that you like to leave the Traveler maybe just a little bit on the higher side of perfect. That way you're able to do this capture that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the critical thing for me, is that I always like to leave the Traveler a little bit higher, as you said, than what I think perfect is, because when are the tiers going to come? The tiers are going to come at the time when the boat is most underpowered, and I can always ease the main sheet a little bit more if my Traveler is a little bit too high. But if it's too low, I've got nothing left. I've got nothing else I can do to try to stop the boat from heeling to weather. The other really cool thing is that when the driver here, when Kevin here actually trims the main in, it actually forces the bow up too. So when you get that lull and the depressurizing of the boat and the bow wants to come down, by trimming the main, you actually rebalance the boat and force the bow up a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's right. Just like we were saying in that first video before, where we saw the boat get too flat and we could have eased the jib. In this kind of condition, you just overstep on the main a little bit since it's a bit windier here, and that'll help save that the bow from crashing down to leeward as well. So that's a good point. And I think this is probably where you start thinking about the Vang a little bit too, right? Because if you're in these conditions where you're not going to be able to get to the Traveler super quick, and it's even maybe a little bit higher than it might be, as you're talking about, if a big puff comes, you got to dump a lot of main sheet real quick. And that's where it's important to have the Vang at least snug so that the boom is going out and not up and opening the leech too much.
Right. Completely agree with you on this. And yeah, I completely agree. And we're actually going to see that a little bit in this video here. So that's why I jumped ahead a little bit to show what was going on. And we can watch it at a little bit of a faster speed so you can actually see what's going on. It's still not quite as fast, but you can actually see the puff coming down right here, about to hit these guys right on the water right there. And you can see the puff hitting. And as we watch what happens here, so the puffs just hit. And it's really interesting. You can see just how fast the reaction is. The puff has just hit a second ago. The forward on this boat is already out hiking. So that means they were counting this puff down without a doubt. The boat's just starting to heel over. You can see the middles already going out, to actually flatten the boat out. And then as we progress here, you can actually see just how fast the driver lets the main sheet out, just to keep the boat on its feet. And for that whole time, we go back right to the end here, for that whole time when the puff hit, you can actually see the boat barely starts to heel over. It does that quick little roundup, but it really stays on its feet for a long time and doesn't round up too much for what's happening.
No, that's really good. I love how you can see how quickly you can see the main leech just go like whap, it goes like thwap down and just lets all the pressure out of it to kind of get that puff off. And I bet you that as that puff hits, the jib trimmer is easing the jib out a little bit to help the boat stay on its feet. And then what's really cool is that the minute that the boat is under control and we're no longer heeling to leeward, the jib probably comes right back on with the winch, and that's going to help pull the bow back down to that normal sailing angle. But I love what you said at the beginning about the forward crew here as they were already out, because I think the most important gear to change, or the most, it's not all about the ropes we're adjusting here, but being able to count down the puff, as you said, is so huge. It's probably the most important thing to have control over in these sort of puffy conditions. And
right.
So absolutely, the jib going out to help the boat, not tip over too much, and then the jib coming back in to help the bow get pushed back down is really good. And Mike, maybe before we move on to the next one, we have a couple really good questions in here. First, there was one from Matt Princing about our thoughts on putting someone downstairs in the lighter air stuff. I think he was asking.
Yep.
I would say, yeah, if it's light air and you don't need bodies up, sorry, best friends. But go downstairs and read a book or something. I think it's definitely the fastest. I know you would probably agree with that. But the next question is really good, Mike, that you can touch on in this video, which is when you get a big lull, is it better to head up for a second or chase the new apparent wind down? And probably, I'm guessing your answer is it depends, but I'm not going to let you get away with that. So give us a better answer than it depends.
It depends.
All right, moving on. Sorry, Jim.
No, I would say definitely. I think it's a little bit of both, and that's just to stay away from the "it depends" answer. I think if it's a really big puff, you have to let the bow come up a little bit, because otherwise you can't get the sails out that fast. But I do think that if you're just letting the bow, and it does depend on sea states too. In very flat water, you can tend to be a little bit more aggressive about letting the bow rise and not easing the sails. But in waves where you have to keep the boat moving and you have to keep it rocking forward, you really have to be more aggressive about easing the sails and not rising the bow. So I think there is a crossover point, or not letting the bow go up too high. And then on top of that, the bound is any time that you're luffing the front of the jib. You have to remember in these boats, the jib and the main are basically the same size. Anytime you're luffing the front of the jib, you're pretty much luffing the entire length of the front of the jib. And you very, very quickly lose 15, 20% of your sail area. And the boat really slows down quickly, very, very quickly, as you lose that sail area. Is that better than saying it depends?
I guess so, yeah. And I think if you're talking about a lull, the answer is probably it depends.
Yeah.
But so in terms of if you're going to chase the puff, the apparent wind down through a lull, the biggest factor on that is probably the wave state. So if you're sailing on that lake, was it Minnetonka we had before? If you get a big lull, you can probably ride it high for a little bit if it's flat water. But if it's real lumpy, if we're down in Annapolis on Labor Day weekend and you crash into a lull, you better be easing sails and putting the bow down into that header just to keep the speed up in the chop. So I think that's kind of the main takeaway for the lighter stuff. Definitely.
Yeah.
But definitely it depends.
Match speed before you match angle, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's go on to some windy stuff. I think we got some good videos coming up.
We do. Yeah, we got some exciting stuff. And, just diving into this video right here, it's pretty fun already. It was pretty sporty on this day out there. So, you're kind of strapping down the patio furniture here a little bit. And I'm sorry that the videos are a little bit, they seem to be a little bit slow right now. But, if we just dive through the process here, we can see what's happening. And, and that's that in this boat, you can actually watch towards the end of the video. You can see right here at the end of the video, you can actually watch the upper part of the main. And the upper part of the main is luffing, but the boat is still heeled over. So as we watch through this part of it, you can actually see the top of the main right there luffing, but the boat's still heeled over. And my real question is that as you get into this breezier condition, how are you trying to keep the boat on its feet? And you're trying to keep the boat on its feet by essentially easing the sails. And how many times have someone said to you, Zeke, oh, but to go upwind, don't you need to have the sails in? And the answer is not really. You need to keep the boat flat, and you need to keep the boat from going sideways. And so in this situation, what's happening is that we're easing the main, which is the right thing to do. in order to get the boat back on its feet, but we're not easing the jib with it. And my comment before about the sail plan being basically the same size for the jib and the main is that the jib is really overpowering the situation here, and it's not letting the main actually luff. So there's still pressure on the top part of the main, and it's still really pushing the boat over on its side. And you can see just how much it goes over in some of these shots.
And what I also see in this, Mike, is how hard of a time they're having keeping the boat kind of tracking straight. And, there's probably some shifts and some puffs going on here. But, what you're talking about with letting the main out and having it luff, but the boat not coming back to flat, straight up, you just need to ease the jib. The jib is knocking the boat over too. It's heeling the boat. So the jib needs to get eased for heel, but it also needs to get eased for the boat balanced, because I think the absolute worst way to go upwind, no matter what boat you're in this heavier stuff, is with the main out and the boat still heeled over to leeward because the jib is still in. So not only is the boat now heeled to leeward, but the jib is in, the main is out, and that's pushing the bow to leeward. It's telling the boat to turn downwind, while the heel in the boat is telling the boat to turn upwind. The driver's having a really hard time finding that balance, and sometimes they end up with lee helm, like you can see a few times in this video when the main is luffing but the jib's in and it's really heeled over. You might even have to be pushing the helm down, trying to keep the bow up while the boat's heeling to leeward. And that's just the absolute worst feeling to have. You can see how hard of a time he's having trying to steer the boat and just keep it on its feet. And all that needs to happen is the jib just needs to be getting eased and trimmed back in through these transitions, just like the main.
Yeah, I think he said it so well. I think the boat isn't easy to drive right now. Mm-hmm. And if the boat isn't easy to drive, it wants something different. That's what for me, that's what it comes down to. And, no matter what's getting done here, they just can't get the boat. It's a bucking bronco at the moment.
Look how much he's moving. He's having to move his tiller just to try to get through the waves and keep the boat kind of tracking. He's behind the boat, I think is the way you put it before. He's always trying to chase and catch up to get the boat tracking correctly again. And it's just a matter of getting the jib eased and getting the jib, kind of moving enough to sort of match what he's doing with the main and the helm to kind of balance it out. So that's what's jumping out at me, is just get the jib out a little bit more. We can talk about leads a little bit later, but you just have to be really quick on the jib sheet to make it easier on the driver.
Yeah, look at how far the bow's turning too through the waves. It's going through. I mean, the bow's going through 20 degrees in the waves, and that's really not going to make your life easy, as you said. So I think there's a lot to be said here. So in the next video here, if we move forward, you're going to see a really good example of two different setups. And you have this boat to weather, and you have this boat to leeward. And the two different setups between the boats are really what's pushing, what's pushing the situation here. And so we'll just slow this video down a little bit so that it can catch up with itself a little bit here. And what we're actually looking at is we're looking at the way that the weather boat here is really, trying really hard to keep the boat going. So they've got the sails eased, they've got the bow down, they've got everything, plunging away. And the boat to leeward here has the bow up. They're doing that, which is the question that we just asked. They're doing that sort of bow up, keeping the sails tight and trying to shed the speed by pinching. And I think there's something to be had somewhere in the middle here. Is kind of when I watched this video.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like that boat to weather, took our advice from just that last slide and did it and just went a little bit too far. Where this, it's a good look. And if they're sailing out by themselves with no other boats on the race course, that might be a really fast sort of bow down VMG mode. You can see how flat they were able to get the main. I think they probably maxed their backstay real nice. But they're sailing just really bow down and fast. And it's probably just a little bit too low by the time they got another 60 J22s on the race course. It might be a little bit too low and they might get sawed off. Whereas that boat to leeward, I think you said it right. they're just a little bit bound up. They're not quick enough to ease their sails out. They've got the boat heeled a little bit too much to leeward. You can see pretty clearly they're heeling more than that boat to weather, and they're just sort of struggling to get enough, enough way on, enough boat speed through the water. So I think it's somewhere in between these two modes is probably perfect, but it's pretty cool to be able to see the two modes right here next to each other and what's different about them.
Yeah. The other thing that I look at too with these is that you see how big the wave that's coming off the bow of this weather boat is when they hit the waves that are in Annapolis here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me says that boat is just driving with a ton of power. Mm-hmm. That boat is just, keeping rolling no matter what's happening. And you can see the way it's just shedding water off. And that's always the feeling that I go for with these, is I'm going for that, when I'm in breeze and I'm trying to keep the boat going fast, I'm going for the feeling that the waves aren't stopping me. If I feel like I hit the wave and I park, then I know that I'm in a situation where I'm just getting too, absolutely too slow. So I think you're pretty
yeah, and,
right
and
there.
the waves change it a lot, with how wavy it is here in Annapolis, as you said. It might be a good mode to be a little bit in this bow down sort of deal, but it's probably a little bit too much, if there were a lot of other boats around. But I like what you're saying about that bow wave, and the boat's surging forward. That guy's he's not on the bucking Bronco that he was on in the last slide, right? It's a little more balanced, and it all came from getting the jib eased enough that he could then ease the main and the boat would sort of depower and go forward. And I think we'd all probably agree that boat to lure is just heeling a little too much. They need to just get more backstay on. And I think, I wanted to bring up the point of the backstay gross tune here, Mike. I go through a huge range of that. I've learned the lesson the hard way in both light air and heavy air when I've gotten lazy about the backstay gross tune. But I think there's so much to be had by having the gross tune in the ballpark and making sure you're able to get enough backstay on, and that it's easy to adjust when you're in this big breeze.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big critical part. And it's something that when we were doing this clinic, we talked about a lot. We talked about a huge amount. And it's just allowing the main to be flat, because there's no reason to luff the main when it's hugely deep, because that's just, again, extra drag. And in this wind speed, that's a lot of extra drag. So if we just move forward here, again, we're seeing a little bit of a difference here in the way that the boats are set up, and we're watching the changes, and we've now gotten this boat to be in a more surging forward kind of method. And if we actually move a little bit forward here, and we'll just slow down, we can start to look at the video of, okay, well, now we've gotten the boat bow down, we've gotten into the surging method, we've gotten the main sheet out. The main is way more twisted than it was in the first video, and it's not even luffing. But then we start to look at the foot of the jib in this video. And to me, the foot of the jib, I always go by that rule that I'm looking for the foot of the jib to be basically centered over the top of the tow rail. And, about a foot back from the forestay tang, I wanted to be sitting about, just over the top of the tow rail. And in this video, you can see that just how deep that jib foot is when it's outside the tow rail. Mm-hmm. And I think, I'd be moving the cars back here, and just moving the cars back, what it's going to do, and my rule of thumb is I always find the place where I'm having to keep the jib sheet for that wind condition, wherever that may be. If that's 6 inches, if that's 12 inches, 10 inches away from the block, the clue being away from the block on the deck, I'm always setting my car so that when I ease the sheet to that amount, my foot is basically just directly over the top of the track, is what I'm always looking for.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. It's definitely, in this breezy stuff, time to start moving the leads back a little bit. And the other thing that's going to do is it opens the slot a little bit more. We kind of all talk about the slot, that gap between the leech of the jib and sort of the belly of the main. And don't forget that, we talked about it a little bit before, but if the jib's in too tight and the main goes out, you're just easing that main down into that slot, and that's going to make it luff more. It might not be actually luffing from the wind, but it's the return coming off the leech of the jib into the belly of the main that's going to make it luff. So by opening up the slot a little bit, which you do by moving the cars back, as you're saying, you're giving yourself more range on the main, where you can ease the main out a little bit more to flatten the boat without having the main start luffing in the middle there. But so I love the point about the jib leads, but it's just amazing to see this boat. This is the same team we saw in the very first video having a hard time. And here it's even windier, I think, and wavier, but they've gotten the jib eased. You know, maybe they could still improve on the lead position a little bit, take some power out of the bottom of the jib as well. But it's just amazing to see this tiller is steady now. The mainsail is not luffing as much, even though the leach of the main is probably further to leeward. And they're just having a much easier time. Even in that big knockdown puff there, they would have spun out before. But just getting the jib eased enough, and they're playing the jib a lot more here, and the boat's just easier and more fun to sail.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it's pretty big differences though, but when we, you know, from light air to this, but when we really come down to it, you know, there are similarities, right? Those similarities are still there. And that kind of brings us back to our original. So, you know, what are those similarities that you're seeing between all of these conditions that you can go as a takeaway to say, yeah, actually, if the boat's talking to me, then I'm doing it correctly. If the boat's easy to sail. So what are those similarities that you see?
It's getting those leaches matching up again, where in that one they matched up a lot more, getting the boat flat. And in that much breeze, you're not going to have the boat dead flat, but it's about managing that heel angle, just like we talked about in the light air of managing the heel so that you're not heeling to weather and messing up the flow on the keel, then heeling to leeward again. Same with the heavy air stuff. It's just a consistent heel angle to make the boat easy to sail and balanced. And, you know, the rig tune is definitely a big part of this. We didn't talk much about the rig tune here, but having dynamic sail trim, being able to adjust quickly to just manage the balance of the boat is really the most important thing. So, yeah.
I think it's actually interesting that we didn't talk about the rig tune as being one of the keys to going upwind in the J22. I think that's actually
you adjust your rig. I thought you just move the sails in and out and yell at your crew.
Exactly, and that's all that it is. Yeah, it's interesting, but the fact of it is, though, that I think as long as the rig is pretty close to where you're looking for it, and you have those tells about overbend wrinkles going halfway back, you know, in the main, that's how you're knowing if your lowers are correct, and you have a tell about the leeward shrouds being just dangling. As long as your rig is close, these things that we're talking about are far more important. And I don't know if you agree with me or not on that, but I
totally agree with you. I think rig tune is crucial to be in the ballpark. If you're way off, it's going to be bad. But where the really fast boats get you, the really fast teams get you, is in these gear changes, adjusting your body position at the right time in the right place, adjusting the sheets ever just so, and having all your gear changes go well. It's not necessarily having the fastest top end speed, but it helps you keep 95% of your fastest speed for more time. You want to just have a high speed average, and you get that by adjusting your sail controls and adjusting your body weight. So
yeah, I think I think that's really important. One other thing that we haven't really touched on is just when you go through this and you're seeing this, I think gear changing is just the critical piece that you just said, and we've talked about it, but really, what are we looking for? If we had to sum up gear changing in the puff or the lull, what are we looking for out of it? What do you think? What would you say we're looking for?
I think the goal of changing gears is keeping the boat balanced, as we said before, maintaining heel angle and keeping it balanced.
Yeah. So I think it's just so interesting, though, that it all comes down to these very simple topics and how you get there. Whether it's moving the main, moving the traveler, moving the sheets, how you get there is that's the effect. The cause is actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the balance of the boat the same the entire way through the changes. I think for me, that's the takeaway I have.
Absolutely agree with you. Well, I think that kind of brings us to the end here, Mike. Thanks for hopping on with me and talking J22s for a little bit, and definitely want to say thanks to everybody that took some time out of their day to join us here. I think, is it Friday? It's hard to tell what day it is anymore, but I know it's almost happy hour. So About time to wrap up, but definitely wanted to say thank you guys all for joining us here. And Mike, if you want to pop to the next slide, you'll see our shining faces one more time. And everybody, please feel free to reach out via email or call us on our phones. Anything we can ever do to help you, please. We invite you to reach out and stay in touch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was, thanks everyone for coming, and just reiterate Zeke's comments. So awesome.
Great.
Fantastic.
Well, hopefully we can see you guys all on the J22 race course in not too much time, but stay safe, be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.